currently attending a National Indigenous Women's Summit. And this is the fifth one, and it happens every 2 years. I am a board member for a nonprofit in Alberta, and they are part of a national organization. It's very interesting because basically what we're doing is we're identifying certain issues and things that we want to talk about, like areas, and then we have these breakout sessions where we're creating calls to action. It's events like these that you kind of have these opportunities to go out and share what you're thinking and what your thoughts are. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of things that I learned today. So I wrote some down today, just kind of like scribbling of ideas and thoughts, and some pretty interesting things that are like food for thought, because when you're in a room full of that, you hear these ideas and you go like, oh, I didn't think about that, or oh, I didn't even consider that, or oh. And one of them was around like the national issues, or the national, like any national initiatives, and like what do we like, what do they think were successful, things like that. And interesting enough, I couldn't think of one that I thought was successful or that I thought was doing very well. And I wasn't the only one in the room, so it was definitely very interesting. And I think, there's still some of these overlapping themes that happen, and I'm coming representing Alberta and coming with an Alberta voice, and you have other Indigenous women there who are like from the East Coast, from like all across Canada, including like BC and Northwest Territories and the Yukon, and so you're learning like so many things, and you realize that the issues are still the same, and the things that we find complicated and interesting are still the same. And so these are the highlights. So we were talking about our national issues, or like are they successful? So we said no. And I think one of the things that we had talked about, and this was very interesting, was when you think national, it's kind of like federal, because the federal government deals with national. And then because of the way they've interpreted everything, their concern is on reserve people. And so they're still coming with the INAC view, which is like Indigenous on reserve. And so when they approach things at a national level, you still have that frame. Whereas what my needs are as an urban individual, and what someone who's rural, or someone who's on reserve, off reserve, Métis, non-status, Inuit, depending on where they live, their needs are going to be different. So instead of thinking national top down, maybe we need to just bust open the system and say, this isn't working. So how do we change the conversation from what are the national needs to regional needs? And one of the things that I found very interesting was, if that's the case, why is it we're always thinking nationally in funding? Why don't we think like comparing it to what are the needs, and let's have the money or the dollars follow the people rather than just on reserve? Because, many of our statistics have already told us that majority of us live off reserve. So it has to change. It just has to change. The whole system has to change. The way we approach things has to change. And we were talking about how it needs to be more local and ground up instead of the top down, which is the traditional model. And yeah, and we also talked about that when you also do it that way, you have all these national organizations who are just fighting amongst themselves or with each other or whoever, of who represents who. And I think if you think nationally and top down, and like, oh, this person represents these people, so I've already dealt with them because I talked to that organization. I think we still need to have that urban grassroots voice, because all these organizations can't say they represent all of us. There's always going to be those few that fall between the cracks or who don't feel comfortable wanting national organizations representing them and being their voice. And so, we have to provide a space for them to talk and contribute. So, yeah. And that's kind of like, and that was one question. And those were the type of conversations that we were having today. And it was so interesting. And we talked about things like, okay, so how do we get more involvement? How do we get people, how do we encourage women to be more, in places where they're the decision makers? And so, so I sit on 3 nonprofit boards, and I'll tell you, I am exhausted. It's pretty tiring, and to be honest, I should have said no to the third one. But I did take a little mini workshop a couple years ago, which was on how to say no, and it's actually done me quite well. And so how do we encourage people? Because, when I'm going to committees and things like that, it's usually the same people who are on these same committees asking the same opinions. And it's because, people know them in the community to be contributing and to be really involved when they join. So they're the people who are asked multiple times, but you're still getting one person's voice asking the same questions in different ways. So it's just like, we need to encourage other people to step up and start contributing in some way, or we just start engaging them differently, right? So maybe there's a way that we need to change that, and I think that's something that definitely I think we could start thinking about. So this conference is pretty interesting. It's only been day 1. It was a very long day. We have a shuttle that picks me up from the hotel and then takes me to where the conference is. And it leaves like 7. I left at 7:30 this morning to go there. And then they, give you food and stuff. And then, I stayed right till the end because the shuttle doesn't like bring you back until like 8:30. So the first shuttle leaves from there back to the hotel at 8:30. So I didn't get home till like 9 o'clock. Oh my goodness. Yeah. 9 o'clock. And I'm pretty tired. I just kind of jumped in the shower and got in my pajamas, and now I'm laying in bed, and I just wanted to vlog and just let you know how my day has gone so far and just share some of the highlights with you. So tomorrow is day 2, and so I'll share some more with you tomorrow. But other than that, I think I'm gonna go to bed because shuttle comes at 7:30 in the morning. So I'll talk to you tomorrow.
The First Nations, Métis, Inuit Youth Caucus have 3 recommendations that we have submitted. However, we wanted to take this time to make this statement. And this is in respect to everyone, and we wanted to share our voice today.
Because we deeply respect the voices of other caucuses, we disagree with the imposed structures of the process that is divisive, competitive, and perpetuates lateral violence.
This process goes against the intended purpose of the summit and against our core values, that the voices of young First Nations, Métis, and Indigenous women and Inuit women are prioritized. Nothing for us without us.
First Nations, Métis, and Inuit youth represent the fastest growing population in Canada. Do not limit our rightful place for our voices today or in the future. We have both the capacity and the right to dictate and engage in our processes.
N'oublions pas que nous sommes déjà les ancêtres, les futurs ancêtres des générations à venir. Les collectivités jeunes, inuits, métis et des Premières Nations hériteront tant des échecs que des succès de toutes ces recommandations. We are already the ancestors of future generations. The youth, the FNMI youth will inherit both the failures and the success of these recommendations.
FNMI youth represent a broad holistic view that takes into account many perspectives, including but not limited to ancestors, future generations, elders, families, communities, Mother Earth, and all creation.
This is another example of no community consultation and removing the voices of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit youth from the process, which we do not accept. First Nations, Métis, and Inuit youth have traveled from all across Canada to represent a larger contingent of voices, only to be told that our recommendations are limited by the parameters that we do not define. We expect to engage in a process with free, prior, and informed consent.
The First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Youth Caucus has developed meaningful and actionable recommendations to the federal, provincial, and territorial table, with the expectation that this statement will be taken into consideration upon their submission.
Thank you for the opportunity to gather us together as young First Nations, Métis, and Inuit women to learn from each other, to empower each other through conversations and actions. Which
Just wanted to bring back the focus of our statement. This statement is in response to the request that a limited 3 number of recommendations will be forwarded to the FNC tables from the entirety of this National Indigenous Women's Summit 5 on March 7th, 2017. The FNMI Youth Caucus raised all these concerns. Koyanani.
Koyanana. Walalio. Extension. Hi.
Mercy. Walalia.
Masicho.